Today, Brian Muldoon and I are sitting down to dive into the life and work of Wayne Teasdale, the monk and author who famously coined the term interspirituality. Now, full disclosure, some of what Brian Muldoon shares might be a bit uncomfortable to hear. But I don't think it's meant to tell you what to believe, but rather challenge us all to figure out what we believe. Welcome. I'm Chris Jones. This is Spiritual Hot Sauce. So I am back with Brian Muldoon. It was so good we had to come back and do it again, except this time we're going to have a conversation, deeper insight into Wayne Teasdale and his teachings, and also into Brian's personal journey of faith. So Brian, welcome back to the sauce.
Good to be here, Chris.
So we were just talking about before we got on into this that Brian has got so many different things going on. This guy's rushing around trying to make time to get here to do this episode. So first of all, thank you for making time.
Yeah.
So let's just jump right in because I know you're limited on your time. Tell me about how you met Wayne Teasdale, what you thought about him when you first met him, and then how that all kind of unfolded till you get to the point where you say, he changed my life.
Well, I was doing a lot of inner work with sort of retired Methodist pastor named Hal Edwards in Chicago. And Hal's ministry was really to clerics and religious officials from every tradition. He ran small groups with them. So a rabbi would be sharing with somebody from the Greek Orthodox Church and so on. And one day, Hal asked me if I would come and do a bit of a presentation on a retreat he was running for these clerics. And I said, well, I'm the last person in the world to be preaching to the not only the choir, but to the pastors up there. But he said, no, I think it'll give him an interesting perspective. So I gave a talk about the path being off the path, because I always seem to be avoiding the traditional routes and taking the alternatives. And while I was there, Hal said, well, there's a monk here at this monastery, St. Procopius, that I know you'd get along with. So you should meet him. And that was Wayne Teasdale. And
About what year is this?
This would have been like 1992 or so, I'd say. And so I met Wayne, and Wayne had lived at a couple of other monasteries besides St. Procopius in New England and around. And even more interestingly, he'd been ordained as a monk in India, in not just the Catholic tradition, but the Hindu tradition as well. Mm-hmm. And Wayne describes this in his book, The Mystic Heart, that he saw parallels, as had the founders of an ashram in India, parallels between Advaitic Hinduism and what's called apophatic Christian mysticism. Let me share a little bit about his personal story. Wayne was the illegitimate child of very suspicious relationship between his biological father and a cleaning woman who worked at their home. Wayne was disavowed and disowned by both of them. Mm. He was set into the world as an orphan. He lived with, I think, 7 different foster families and was completely unloved and uncared for. And one day, when he was in high school, I think, he was sitting on a park bench reading, and a gentleman came by and said, young man, why are you not in school? And he said, well, because it doesn't matter anymore. None of this matters. And this was a guy that he referred to as Uncle John. Just out of the goodness of his heart, this complete stranger said, well, this is not okay. You need to be educated properly, and I'll see that you are. And Uncle John basically became Wayne's de facto parent. And he not only put him through high school, but through college. Wayne ended up with a PhD from Fordham University in mysticism. And took up communication with a former Oxford Don named Bede Griffiths, who was the abbot of a small monastery in South India. And Bede invited Wayne to join their community. Bede was maybe the third abbot that this Shantivanam had as its leader. And it was founded by a couple of Jesuits, I believe, who believed that on the mystic path, all traditions merge into one. And so they celebrated both, as you say, Advaitic Hinduism, celebrated Mass with readings from not only the Christian scriptures, but also from the Vedas. And Wayne was part of that tremendous history, very experimental.
That explains a lot.
Yeah. Wayne found his way there, and he happened to be in London at one point, and somebody came up to him and said, are you going to the meeting with the Dalai Lama? And he goes, I don't know anything about what you're talking about. He goes, oh, well, over at such and such a place, the Dalai Lama's meeting with a group of Christian theologians and monks, and you should probably go. And he said, well, that sounds really interesting. So he did. And when Wayne showed up, the only empty chair was the one sitting right next to the Dalai Lama. So he took that. And for the rest of the meeting, the Dalai Lama only spoke to Wayne.
Wow.
He sensed something very powerful about that connection. And from that moment, they became very close friends. As you know, Thomas Merton, the great Trappist monk and Zen practitioner, had been a close friend of the Dalai Lama since 1968 or so. And with Merton's unfortunate death, the Dalai Lama really had nobody on the Christian side to share with, and Wayne became that person. He personified the Christian ethic.
So do you think, and I'm not asking you to speak on behalf of Wayne, but did Wayne ever share with you in your time with him that he thought that was divine intervention, or did this just kind of happen?
No, I think he definitely felt the guidance of God in that connection very strongly. And Wayne, for all of his interfaith and interspirituality, was first and foremost a practitioner of Catholicism and believed very much that God had created that connection.
I think he made the quote that I am a Christian by faith, but a Hindu by culture and a Buddhist by temperament. That's an interesting quote. But that's a very in-depth quote, too. It was very thoughtful.
Yeah.
All right. So he got connected with the Dalai Lama. They became friends, and the Dalai Lama's connection to Christianity. And how did you come to form a relationship with him, a friendship, how he would change your life?
Well, in 1993, in Chicago, there was a big interfaith event called the Parliament of the World Religions.
Right.
And when we first met at his monastery, fell into conversation about each of us and our pursuits. Wayne said, well, there's this big event coming up, and I'm on the board of trustees for the event, and I'd like you to make a presentation at the Parliament. And let's do one together. Let's talk about men's spirituality. Let's talk about the interfaith path that each of us has walked in our own way. And we'll do a workshop on that. And we'll call it A Monk in the World. Because I was a civilian outside the monastery, but I loved going to monasteries, retreat, and for meditation and contemplation. And Wayne was an insider who always wanted to be out. So it was a very strong friendship from the beginning.
So you guys had a very nice connection. So do you think that was divine intervention as well, or did that just happen?
I think it fit within both of our lives, and I wouldn't dare ascribe it to God or any of the more troublesome beings out there. They could have been messing with
However it came about, it came about.
It came about, and we became close friends, and Wayne became like a godfather to my kids. He introduced me to Barbara Fields, who was the content organizer of the Parliament, a brilliant, brilliant woman who understood every tradition extremely well and was conversant in all of them, to the point that she was actually able to facilitate the best expression of these many religions at the Parliament. Her mind really encapsulated the whole thing. So Wayne and Barbara and I became kind of a triumvirate over time.
It's in that place where you developed that relationship with Wayne?
Yes.
But it would carry on for years, though.
Yeah. And Wayne was especially good friends with Tenzin Chogyal, TC, the Dalai Lama's younger brother, who just passed away in the last couple of weeks. And so he was sort of a family favorite for the Dalai Lama. Stayed at the Kashmir Cottage, which is where the Dalai Lama's mother lived, and was welcomed throughout Dharamsala. Everybody knew him as the Dalai Lama's buddy.
So I have a question for you. Everybody can go see Wayne Teasdale speaking. There's a lot of videos out there. He's authored a lot of books. But what was your personal relationship with him? Was you more impacted with his teaching or the friendship?
I would say his friendship was his teaching. Yeah, I mean, he could converse with the best of them in terms of, what's the nexus and connection between Advaitic Hinduism and Christian mysticism, but who he was as a person was really his teaching.
So what is it that impacted you so much that you would say he changed your life?
Chris, when I met Wayne, I would say I was kind of awash in a somewhat despairing, materialistic worldview. Had been disappointed in many ways with my inability to find the true path. And when I met Wayne, all that lifted. I think it's fair to say that my relationship with him was one that was benefited by grace.
Okay. So before you were struggling to find your personal experience with the divine or your truth, and after Wayne, it made the path clear. You understood it. Is that a fair assessment? Am I getting this right?
Yes. Yeah. And he provided a lot of very generous coaching and teaching along the way.
Share some of that with me so I kind of know what you're talking about. I would like to experience that with you through your story.
Yeah. Well, for example, I was in Dharamsala, India with Wayne on one occasion. We were going to meet with the Dalai Lama to prepare him, let him know about a conference called Synthesis Dialogues. As we were walking up to sort of his official residence, there were 20 or so lepers who were sitting on blankets by the side of the road. And with their hands out, they were begging. Wayne was just shocked by this. When we got together with one of the top monks in the Tibetan government in exile, Wayne said, "What is it with these monks? You think everything should be divine and spiritual, and yet here are these people who are suffering from a terrible disease, begging outside the palace. This is not all right. These people need to be cared for and loved and supported."
So he was an advocate for the less fortunate.
Always. And was not shy about embarrassing any of his friends in other spiritual circles. And he was especially appalled by the U.S. government's failure to support Tibet in its struggles after having been conquered by China. So he lived the very best of Christianity.
I was going to say, that sounds like the manifestation of a disciple of Christ, because that's what we were told to be discipled in, is how he loved others.
Yeah.
So he was always like this. He was always moved by people that were hurting or needy, especially the less fortunate.
Yeah. And not just people. He felt the same compassion for the environment. In fact, when he was later ordained by the Archbishop or Cardinal of Chicago, Francis George, part of his ordination was a ministry on behalf of the planet, as well as a ministry on behalf of the people of Tibet. Just a short story about that. There was an interfaith conference in Grand Rapids, Michigan, a number of years ago, and Wayne was giving a presentation there with Houston Smith. So I was there to just observe and support Wayne. And I was in a meeting with some other people, and Wayne came rushing in, and he said, "There's a terrible emergency. I need to have everybody come with me so we can intervene." And we're like, oh, I thought somebody had been assaulted. So Wayne led 3 or 4 of us to one of the missions, an AA mission. And there was a really rough crowd, I have to say, hanging around and looking at this group of folks who seemed to be full of themselves. And Wayne just came up and he said, did you see that little bird that fell out of its nest? It was right here, and I put a piece of bread right next to it. The guy goes, "You're one of those guys?" He goes, "Me too. I found a baby squirrel in my backyard, and I've been taking care of it ever since." And Wayne was like, "Well, I don't know where that little baby bird went, but we need to find it and take care of it." And that, I mean, he was not shy about interrupting the entire schedule of this conference to take care of a baby bird.
Being a good steward, yeah. Yeah. So let's go back to where you were talking about these lepers that was begging for money. And you've seen Wayne have such an outpouring of compassion to the point that he would voice his concerns and opinions to the people in charge there, sure with a great amount of conviction. You said you named this as one of the primary things that, impacted you and changed your life.
Well, it wasn't just that he complained to the authorities about their not taking care of these lepers. He insisted that I come up and be with them. And so I did. So he and I both went up. We got to know who they were. They brought their family members along. No, it seemed like nobody had ever actually paid any attention to them. And we kind of got a feeling for the pecking order of the group and what they needed and why. And it was just extremely touching. And then a year later or so, I was back in Dharamsala, and a cab driver came up to me. He said, "Your friends are waiting for you." And I said, "What do you mean, my friends?" He said, "Well, come with me." And all the lepers had gathered an alleyway and held out their hands.
Let's talk about this for a second, because that's a pretty powerful moment. And what I'm hearing is most people would walk by, or most people would give money, and then we've done our part. We've almost just kind of soothed our own guilt, or made ourselves feel better. But that's not what he did. What he did is he made them the priority. These were the people in need. Yeah. So he did everything he could to not only give an immediate, comfort of money, but he also wanted to change their circumstances, and he got to know them. There's something very Christ-like in that.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Because for him, everyone in need was his brother.
So you are impacted by love and compassion and the stewardship, this Christ-like behavior from Wayne Teasdale. And this starts impacting you differently. It starts hitting you, and it starts changing you. What starts changing in you from that?
Well, I would say up until that point, compassion was optional for me. There were times that I would, and times that I wouldn't respond. And I feel like Wayne planted a seed in me by his example of what it means to actually love your neighbor. And everybody is your neighbor. And he lived that. Being at the Parliament of the World Religions, there was a wonderful time to see how that played out in other traditions as well. I remember there was one religion, which I won't name, that was having a big presentation on caring for the homeless. Well, some social activist in Chicago got about 30 homeless people together and brought them into the presentation, where they were ejected by security forces.
Oh, my gosh.
And it's like, that ain't it. I mean, everybody's shadow side, I think, gets exposed from time to time, particularly at events like that.
Yeah.
And
did you ever see times in your life or in Wayne's life where it was just people in your path? It was almost like they were placed there in order for you to help them because you would help. Hey, everybody, it's Chris. We'll get back to the episode in just a minute. But if you're still with me, then you clearly like the flavor of the sauce. So make sure you follow so you don't miss what's coming up. We're starting a new series called Scars That Speak, where guests share real stories of trauma, suffering, and the hope that somehow breaks through it all. These are powerful conversations about finding life where there should be none. So follow. And if you know someone who needs this kind of heat, then share it with them. Thanks for listening.
well, I at the time, I definitely did feel that these opportunities were being provided in some fashion that I couldn't quite describe. There was a kind of synchrony that certain people would show up at certain times. I don't want to place too much emphasis on that because I think life and the world unfold according to their nature. But but I there have been obviously a number of things that I've been fortunate to experience that in many ways are inexplicable.
So you had said that Wayne planted this seed in you through his behavior, through this love. Did he help cultivate that in you?
Yeah, he did. Wayne was a great teacher. He taught, but the teaching that I'm most grateful for was what he gave to my children. Wayne was over for dinner on a pretty regular basis, and my 3 kids were in middle school at the time, and he just took them to heart and would give them little lessons that he felt they would be able to understand, and built a beautiful relationship with them. Just that sort of Uncle Wayne vibration.
So Wayne, it sounds like just lived in the moment, that where he was, that's who got his attention and his love.
Yeah, living in the now. He was definitely that. But he showed how to cultivate that. He talked about his own spiritual practice and how the benefits of that. He gave teaching just in a casual way on meditation technique and the different forms of meditation. So being with Wayne at any point, something was going to emerge.
You start evolving and you start changing because you said that you just didn't know where to go. You fought hard to find some spiritual truth in your own life, and you just was not successful until Wayne. And he showed you love and planted a seed in that of how you was to see the world. What happened with you to start cultivating this and start growing, where you started having this spiritual growth yourself that became open?
Well, I think one of my beliefs is that meaningful, long-lasting inner change is not just a matter of what happens in your head, but how you live. That improvement or growth in one's spiritual life, for it to work, it has to be put to work.
So we started seeing the external virtue happening. What was internally happening? What does that transformation look like?
I would say overall, Chris, it was experiencing pure joy by embracing this path. Because
when you say path, just so I understand, are you talking about the path of externally loving other people and helping humanity?
Actually putting it into action.
Now, did you practice things like meditation? Did you read any scriptures? Do you currently read any text or higher writings or philosophy?
For, probably 40 or 50 years I've been practicing meditation. Wayne gave me a lot of one-on-one instruction in that. So that definitely strengthened my meditation practice. And Wayne's practice was meditating twice a day and also going for like a 1-hour walk. So I started not every day, but taking up that practice as well.
Did you start reading anything to challenge yourself with some of different ideas and philosophy other than just, and I shouldn't say just love because that is everything to me, but was there other things that was pushing you in kind of a spiritual development of your own personal faith?
Well, I would say attempting to understand the principles of non-dualism. So reading things like The Cloud of Unknowing, very interesting books on that which cannot be said, non-conceptual meditation, and The Mystical Language of Unsaying, if you're familiar with that, basically teaching us how to think in a non-conceptual way, to be able to say things like, well, I am God, God lives within me, and of course I'm not God. That kind of dialectic.
The divine spark. Yeah, the divine spark that's in you, that's in all of us.
Yeah,
and what you mean.
But not going beyond having a conceptualization of what that means. In other words, as human beings, it seems like about the highest level of our cognition is to appreciate the mind of God. But that's impossible to do. I mean, is there a way of encountering the divine without reducing it to a object-subject dualism? So it's not an easy challenge, and I think that's why practices like meditation are so important, that we can somehow have that connection without limiting to the conceptual structure that we deal with in everyday life.
Your experience that you had, but that is so undefinable, but yet transforming, even if you could put it into words, it's not going to help me at all, is it? I mean, the truth is that's your experience.
Right.
That we all have a path and we all have things we have to work out. And we can share our journeys and encourage one another to get busy on our journeys, but you can't take my truth and live it as your truth.
Right.
It just doesn't work like that.
Right.
So,
right.
And it sounds like you've read books that speak more of enlightenment, of a Buddhist perspective without being Buddhist, and kind of from the Vedantic view from Hinduism. Have you ever went back and reconciled where you came from in your faith, of your origins, of your religion, or is that something?
Oh no, it's a regular part of my life. I'm one of 8 siblings in an Irish Catholic family. I have a brother who's a deacon in the church, very involved in a lot of baptisms and funerals and sermons and all that kind of stuff. So, each of us finds our path or doesn't, but we're all walking it, whether we know it or not. And sharing, I think the best we can offer to others is to share our own path and say, let's walk alongside each other for a while here, as long as it makes sense. And if we have to go our separate ways, that's good. So I think a big part of this is learning, at least in my case, learning to accept that everybody is doing the best they can. We need to support each other in whatever way we can. I mean, I am constantly finding new insights into what spirituality really means. It's a constant process and a delightful one.
What's something you could give to somebody else to help them with this?
The first thing that comes to mind is facing our own shadows in kind of a Jungian way, that each of us tends to undermine and sabotage our own spiritual growth, and looking for ways that is occurring and addressing that it's a very kind of real world slog through our own failures and misjudgments and poor choices. But that's the stuff that we need to address, to me, in discovering our own spiritual nature, is addressing all that shadowy stuff that we'd rather not look at.
We are the mountain that keeps us from God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Overcome yourself and, okay. So you're saying tackle the hard things. Use doubt. Use doubt on...
Doubt to me is the way. It's not... Doubt isn't a problem. It's the challenge to make sense and dive as deeply as we can. What are the reasons I'm doubting? Are there valid reasons for this? Have I adopted something that actually is indefensible? And so looking at all the hard stuff is the way. Find friends on the path. I think it's just really important. In Buddhism, they talk about the three essential pieces being Buddhist doctrine and the practice of it, and being part of a sangha or a community. It's really important. It's not just address our loneliness, but that's what opens us up, I think, is loving response from those who've got our backs.
We need a community. It's to encourage you to keep going, encourage you to keep running your race. That's what it should be. And if it's not doing that, it's probably not the right community.
Right. Yeah. Great, Chris. Yeah.
What's the last thing that you would leave everybody with?
Well, the Jesus character in my book, The Luminous One, his doctrine, his understanding is all reduced to the demand to love everyone, everywhere, all the time. I think if we're able to move in that direction, then we're going to find a lot of powerful gifts along the way, because it's obviously really, really difficult and challenging to love those who we feel are destroying the world around us or have given us some reason to hate. And to overcome that, that's where we start, and that's a powerful, powerful path, I think.
If a man has been poisoned, you don't give him more poison to fight the poison. You have to give him the antidote to the poison.
Yes. And love is the antidote. Yeah.
You think Wayne would be happy with where you've come to? Would he say you've done well?
I think so, yeah. And it's because Wayne was a very forgiving person.
That's fair.
So I'm not going to say it's well-deserved. I'm just saying he was a great friend. Miss him.
Yeah. Let's talk about The Luminous One. You've got this book, and the last time he's on here, we talked a lot about that.
Yeah.
But you also have Mind University. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about that.
For the past 9 years, along with my friends Rebecca Armstrong and Andrew Shepard, we have created what we hope is at least a partial way of training our minds to not fall under the spell either of AI or of the negative influences that have taken over the internet. So good thinking has never been more important than it is now, because literally the future of the human race depends on it. And good thinking is not something that you get just by reading a book. It's something that your brain has to be trained for. And very few of us are trained in that way. So
a lot of us are trained what to think, but not how to think.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And critical thinking in all of its dimensions is really essential. So Mind University is, depending on how you do it, a 12 or 15 unit program for training the mind, how to avoid cognitive bias, how to keep ourselves from being propagandized, or to have our minds shaped by forces outside of our control or even knowledge. So we're hoping to launch that soon, and there's just a lot to it. It seems the deeper we go, the more work there is to deal with it. So we're hoping to get that out soon.
Just one last question I forgot to ask. Do you consider yourself to be a disciple of Wayne?
I would say on my best days.
Yeah, I think you should write that book.
Well, I do want to put in a plug for Wayne's book, The Mystic Heart, though, because for those who are wondering, what is this stuff about? He's got beautiful explanations of all that you and I have been talking about and how they all fit together. So,
Brian, I appreciate you coming on The Sauce, and I'm sure we'll chat again soon because I enjoy these chats.
Me too.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks for joining me here on Spiritual Hot Sauce. I'd love to hear from you, so please reach out with questions, comments, and/or concerns. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and review us. You can follow us on Facebook for updates and information. And if you enjoy the flavor of the sauce, then please share it with others. I would appreciate that. We'll see you next time.